Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. We're coming live from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. It's my first time here in Malaysia. It snowed in Korea on Sunday, so I'm very happy to be here in the warm and sunny Kuala Lumpur. My name is Derek Kun-hee Kim. I am a US licensed IP attorney working in Seoul, Korea. And a big part of my practice is I work with a lot of the entertainment industry and a lot of the big names that we know. I do a lot of music law, music licensing, etc., which is a big reason why I'm very honored to host this live chat on copyright in the Malaysian music industry. So first, I want to give a very special thanks to the World Intellectual Property Organization, Korea's Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism, and of course, my IPO for hosting this fabulous event. And I think we're all, yes, we can clap to that. Our goal is just to have a very practical and digestible conversation about copyright here in the Malaysian music industry. So I hope everyone can take something from it and apply it to their lives here. So before we get started, let me just give a quick kind of observation on the Malaysian music industry. So the last time I checked, the Malaysian music industry is valued at 500 million RM, or approximately 105 million USD, excuse me. And like a lot of countries in the world, 80% of music consumption comes off streaming. It's a new way we apply and then we listen to our music. However, kind of a big issue that we're seeing is that even though there's been a huge rise in independent artists here in Malaysia, overall awareness of copyright and CMO engagement seems relatively low. So that's something I think we definitely need to be aware of. So a lot of people ask me as a music attorney or as an IP attorney, like, what do you really do, right? How does copyright apply? Well, copyright is a bundle of rights. It's not just a one-size-fits-all. But there's kind of two main rights that I want everyone to know today. It's the rights of authors and the rights of performers. So authors, these are the people who actually create the song or write and compose the song. But it's the performers, it's our favorite bands, maybe our favorite K-pop artists that bring the song to life. So to give a kind of practical example, if BTS has the performer rights to a song, HYBE, their entertainment agency, might have the author rights to the song. So it's very important that you all know what rights you have as creators, because depending on whether you're the author or whether you're the performer, you have to know your rights to be able to take advantage of your copyright. So I've been talking to some of our panelists here, and it seems like some people are scared of copyright, and you don't need to be scared, because being aware of your copyright, or copyright awareness, is empowerment to musicians and creators. Because if you don't know your copyright, you're not going to be able to maximize your potential as a musician, and you're not going to be able to make as much money as you can off your creative work, which is obviously the most important thing here. Well, that's enough of the technical things here. I just want to now have the privilege of introducing our live panel, as well as David here in the UK. Why don't we start off, Prashant, we'll have you introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Professor Wati and go on. So if you could each take a quick second to introduce yourselves.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Prashant. I am the founder of Zeno Entertainment. We are a recording label focusing on the Malay, Chinese, Sabah and Sarawak markets in Malaysia, as well as a brand to artists advertising agency. So we've been around for 13 years in April, and we deal with some of the biggest brands and biggest artists here in Malaysia. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Prof.
Okay, I'm Rohazawati. All right, I've been teaching intellectual property for the last 38 years. So I've seen the copyright industry grow in Malaysia. And I'm right now the chairman of the Copyright Tribunal. So young artists who have problems can come before the tribunal. Okay, so I'm here to participate in sharing my knowledge in copyright for our young artists.
Okay, Ahmad.
Okay, hi guys. My name is Ahmad. I was a songwriter, recording artist, performing artist, and entrepreneur in the music industry. And now that's basically a fancy way of saying I'm a self-signed artist. And now I work with the state government of Selangor. Thanks.
Okay, and hi, good evening, everyone. I'm known as Kimi here. So in Malaysia industry, I'm known as an activist and also a self-owner of a publishing house that's called Taja Archive, Sam Berhad. And we've been here for almost 15 years. And I do a lot of session and educating the users, songwriters, and also the artists about the rights under a project called Langkah Baru. So I'm the co-founder of Langkah Baru. So it's great to be here with these fellow sheep friends and welcoming everyone here.
All right. Thank you, Kimmy. And last but not least, we also have David joining here from the United Kingdom. I believe it's very early in the morning in the UK. David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, David, if you could just take a quick second to introduce yourself. So David is the author of How to Make a Living from Music, which is a WIPO publication that's available for free on the WIPO website. But he's worked with a lot of the major artists across the world. So David, if you could just please introduce yourself.
Hi, yes, my name's David Stops. I started off as a musician. I was a keyboard player, guitarist, and a singer. And I wasn't very good at that. So I went into the business side of music and became a promoter. In fact, when I got into the business side of music, I found that a lot of people were sort of failed musicians like me. There's an awful lot of them in there. Anyway, I became a promoter, and back in the day, I presented bands like Pink Floyd, Queen, the Ramones, The Clash, Genesis, U2, and particularly David Bowie. I'm still doing that. I'm still presenting bands in the UK. We put on a band called Blossoms from Manchester last week, who were fantastic, definitely one to look out for. I then went into artist management. I managed Howard Jones. We sold 8 million albums with him. And these days I manage Thompson Twins' Tom Bailey. He's sold 10 million albums. I was also a director of PPL, which is the second largest collective management organization in the world for performers and record companies. I was a director of PPL for 10 years. And then my wife and I, when David Bowie sadly passed away, we created the first statue of David Bowie in the world in my hometown of Aylesbury in England. And if you're ever visiting England, please come and see us in Aylesbury and you can see the statue. And as Derek has kindly said, I'm also the author of How to Make a Living from Music, the third edition of which you can download for free from the WIPO website. So whatever you do, check that out, because go to the WIPO website, How to Make a Living from Music, third edition, and it's a free download, so you can see it. I've also got the Dead Tree version here, which you can also get. I love the Dead Tree version. Anyway, I'm very much looking forward to this chat, and thank you very much for having me.
Right. David, you have a lot of fans here in Malaysia, so you'll have to join us here sometime very soon. But let's get started here with our first topic, which is the intercultural dynamic of the Malaysian music industry. So this is our third of 5 live chats that we're doing all across Asia Pacific. Our first one was in the Philippines talking about animation. Last month we were in my mother country of Korea talking about music, and here we are now in Malaysia talking about music once again. And I get the sense that the Malaysian music industry, or the Malaysian music, kind of has an intercultural dynamic. And Prashant, maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. What is the intercultural dynamic of Malaysian music?
Well, I think there's no running away from culture in music, wherever you're from, wherever part of the world you're from, right? Everybody's music today is derived from each culture, right? So every country in the world has their own culture in music, right? I think internationally wise, you see, like in Korea now you have K-pop. That's also a Korean culture influence pop music, right? So in Malaysia, we also have a lot of cultural instrumentations that has put our music where we are today. Specifically in the Malay music, you have a lot of traditional instruments that are being used today. At one period of time, people were very worried about, like, oh, is our music going to get lost? The traditional instruments is dying, it's going missing. But I believe it's just a change of mood in music, right? In generations, we always, while we move, the new generation, they listen to different kinds of music. And most of the time, it's just a cycle, right? And when it comes back, so very recently, you can see singers like Mimi Fly, for example, who have brought back the traditional traditional instruments into her music, and she's making it big. In Indonesia, you have this girl named Nekila, who has done a song which she brought dangdut, and she mixed it with electronic beats. A very American culture kind of beats, and the song is now doing 100 million streams on YouTube in 3 months. It's really crazy, right? Culture is something really amazing. People are always very curious, very excited to learn about other people's culture. So I think in the sense of the dynamics of culture in music, I think it's always there. It's just how you make use of it.
I totally agree. I think music is really an extension of culture, right? And
Yeah.
you see kind of the charm of each culture in the music that we listen to, which is probably why, Ahmad, maybe you've been in the music industry for a while now. What's the evolution you've seen in the Malaysian music industry from, when you were working as an artist to today? How has the Malaysian music kind of trend changed?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I think how music trends have changed, it comes with the advance of technology, right? To make a better comparison would be if when I was starting listening to hip hop music, right? And if an album came out in the States today, I would get it in a quarter, 3 months, right? Now, if my favorite rapper comes up with a song right now, I will get it right now. So in terms of trends, we are catching up faster, right? And with that comes a degree of transfer of knowledge, transfer of culture, transfer of sounds and songwriting formats. So I think there's been globally, there's been a great flattening of and interchanging of culture. And, it's just how products that are derived from the creative industry travel around right now is at a speed that I could not have imagined when I was a teenager, basically.
Yeah, I agree, because the way we consume music will obviously impact the artist, right, and how they are making the music as well. Kimmy, you've worked a lot with songwriting and song publishing. Maybe you could talk about the intercultural dynamic of Malaysian music, or any changes that you've seen in recent years or in the past?
Yeah, that's a lot actually. Well, on publishing matters, and from my perspective, under publishing, it is most exciting and challenging because of these multicultural activities. They create more sounds, more genres, and fusion works of traditional to the current music. So we on the publishing side, we have to learn and to adapt on the licensing and more on engaging this submission or registering it, because different culture, different country have a different act and different license style. So this is the challenges that we face, and this is the difference that we are facing now for this current multicultural things in current year.
For sure. I was just talking to Prashant. So in Korea, you can actually copyright the choreography or the dance moves, which is it's kind of like what you're saying.
New to me, right? It's new to me.
Yeah, but it's so interesting, because then it's like, how do you then license a dance move to somebody else, right? So definitely as the industry changes, right, I think us as copyright professionals, we have to catch up, right, and know what's going on for sure. No, I love seeing the intercultural dynamic here. I now want to change topics now, moving on to our second topic, which is the distribution, from inspiration to recording, kind of the entire process per se, from going from the actual song to actually recording it and so on. So distribution channels, let's say you're an author and you have a work, you've made a song. Well, now you got to get it out into the world so that people hear it and know about you, and so you can make a living off of it. I want to ask Professor Wati about maybe the distribution channels here in Malaysia, and how has a change in the distribution channels affected authors and performers?
Okay, when we look at the provision of the Copyright Act, you see that with regard to author and performer, the law gave them equal protection, because now we are member of the WIPO Copyright Treaty as well as the WIPO Performance and Phonogram Treaty. So therefore, the distribution right If we are talking about the performer, you have the right with regard to giving permission for fixation of your work and also for authorization of or the performance of your work. So the right of reproduction is very vast because you see that you have the right to control everything. So either hard copy, soft copy, online, okay, streaming, for example. So you name it, is given to you. So if you are good with regard to how you distribute your work, you can collect at every point, for example. So with regard to the composer, again, with regard to this composer, you see that the Copyright Act also gave them similar right as owner of musical work. So you have the composer as well as the performer who perform the work. So the Malaysian Copyright Act try to assist this performer in all channel of distribution. So they shouldn't be afraid with regard to taking legal action, for example. And of course, in Malaysia, we encourage this young performer to go and register their right, because though we are member of BERN, right are automatic granted, but we have a voluntary notification of copyright. So with that, even though some young performers says that if I want to register my right voluntarily, but still I have to pay money, but there are advantages, because if you want to sue for infringement, that certificate of registration go a long way in taking legal action should anybody infringe your right.
Yeah, you know, it's as the law change, or excuse me, as the way we consume music changes, a lot of times technology will outpace the law. Technology will be faster than the law. So a lot of times there's a catch-up game there. I want to bring in David here today because David's coming not only from a European standpoint, but just from a global standpoint as well. David, how has the change in the distribution channels affected authors and performers, maybe not only in Europe, but across the world?
Yeah, well, thank you. You have to really have a little brief look at the history of what's happened with digitalization. It started with Napster in 1999. We then had 14 years of global decline in the music industry, where the pirate stations really ruled the day. It got so bad in about 2007 that I think it was 90% of all music in the world was being consumed from the pirate system. And, that really amounted to market failure. But there were two people that actually saved us. The first was Steve Jobs at Apple, who in 2003 launched iTunes and the iTunes platform. He was actually interested in selling computers. He wasn't interested in selling music at all. And it worked beyond his wildest dreams because he used music to sell computers. So much so that in 2011, Apple became the most valuable corporation in the world. In 2017, it exceeded $1 trillion in value, and it's still the most valuable corporation in the world in 2025. Unfortunately, Steve Jobs never bought into the idea of streaming. And that's why Apple came to the party really late in 2015. Daniel Ek launched Spotify in 2008, and that really changed everything. That was a complete game changer. And it's because of Daniel Ek and Spotify, really, that we've had the boom years we've had since 2014. So that's the sort of background. The other interesting thing to remember is that back in the day with the CDs, there was a music fan had about 10 data points. You may sell 6. You might buy 6 concert tickets in a year, and you might buy 4 CDs. So you'd have 10 days with the analytics that we have.
David, I think we're going to have to get back. I think I'm going to have to cut you off right there. So we'll get back to you here in a quick second. So thank you so much for your input there. We're going to move on to our second subtopic in this main topic, which is working with a label and working independently as an artist. Ahmad, you've been an independent artist. I mean, what do you think is the best way to go? Is it being independent? Is it being working with a label? Or what are the pros and cons of both, would you say?
I am going to be biased and say be independent, right? The pros and cons, I think the pros of being independent is you can do what you like, when you like, how you like, and why you like. That's the pros, But the cons is first of all, you will bear the financial risk. You will bear more of the financial risk. That's why you get more of the revenue or the profits. And I think for you to have for you to build a commercially viable independent label, it's always hard to get the momentum going. You know, we always talk if you read startup books, in startup culture, they talk about the flywheel to get the momentum going. So that is the difficult part, I think. Right now, with whatever you have online, I don't think it's difficult to get the knowledge and information and maybe templates on how to set a lot of things up, you know, in terms of marketing, in terms of your paperwork and whatnot. So I would say the main con is actually to get the momentum going, you know. And one common mistake is to try to wear all the hats at once.
That's a big mistake.
Yeah, I know. I make it a lot. You know, so I had to learn through stages. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like what can you do for me kind of mindset, right? Because like you said, like the label has a platform. So sometimes that's something independent artists can benefit off of, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think I just wanted to add to that, right? Like I have a slightly different thinking.
Go on.
I believe that being independent is good, yes, but there's always understanding where you stand as an artist.
Correct.
You got to decide what works for you, right? Like people say, like, do you consider maybe like Bruno Mars as independent, right? So he might own his tracks, like Taylor Swift does. She owns all her tracks now, but she still uses a major distribution channel that helps her connect her music to the world, which is an investment. When you are big enough, the investment comes in a different manner. So I think it's in which position you are at a point of your career. At the start of your career, when you're nobody knows you, you just got discovered, you might need that infrastructure of a label to bring you somewhere. Yep. But when you are there, and then you must learn your rights. What are you eligible to? Like, I know I'm big. I know people want me. I might want to share less with the label. So as a recording label, it's actually chicken and egg story, right? So like for us, it's very simple. If we invest the money, it's a business. We want to make some returns. Correct. But if we invest less, and then we also expect to make less, right? So I think as an artist, it's important to know where you are in your career, what you need or what you don't need, and then you can decide what kind of deals you want to sign with the labels, whether it's a management 360 deal, or you want to do a distribution deal, or you would want to do a licensing deal. There are a lot of kind of deals you can do with a recording company. It's just that in the early days, if you don't know what your rights are, you don't know where you stand as an artist, that is the challenge, because then you sign a whole deal and give everything in perpetuity to your label, and 30 years down the line, oh shit, what happened? You know, I don't own anything anymore. So I think a lot of education is required to know and understand better where you stand in the industry, what rights do you have, what rights do you have to give, and I think that's the balance that you need to know to make that decision.
Yep.
I second you, Prashan, on that. But again, if you want to be an independent, you need to know what sort of thing that you're good at, your forte. If you said that you're good in composing, then you can be independently working on that, towards that. But if you want to be an artist, you want to be an independent artist on your view or opinion on production or your creators, then you can. But always find a good team to be part in your group. So your management team can help you to move towards your achievement. So independently is good, but get the right resources to work with you as a team. That's most important thing, because you can't win everything by your own. So independently is good, but get a good team to work with you.
Yeah, not everybody's like Ahmad when he started. He's got a good team. He worked with very, very good people, I know. And yeah, and just part of his growing his career, he had a very, very good team behind him.
Can I make one comment?
Absolutely.
Well, through my experience, sometimes young artists who do not know their rights sell off, like you said, Prasan, everything.
Everything.
Okay? And therefore, because of that, they then found out that the song has been given to somebody else throughout the copyright duration. And they got nothing left, for example. So that's why I second the fact that, well, it's good to have all the parties who can assist you, but be sure that those who are assisting you know the law. Because sometimes they are all willing to assist, but they don't know the provision of the Copyright Act, and that's why, like Prashant said, they sign away their right in perpetuity. Well, even in copyright law, there's no such thing in signing away your right in perpetuity, because after all, the duration is only 50 years for a recording, sound recording, and life plus 50. So how come it go in perpetuity, for example? So it's very interesting with regard to when I read contract to say that the artist has signed away, for example, everything in perpetuity, the total bundle of right, for example.
Yeah, you know, whether you're independent or whether you're with a label, you have to know your copyright and you have to know what your rights are, because that's the web of law that allows you to thrive as a creator, right? And for me, coming from my perspective, I'm so passionate about this, it's because Korea is a very small country, but one of the reasons it developed so fast is because there was a web of copyright law that encouraged cultural exchange. And I think, why can't that also be the case with Malaysia and beyond and the rest of the world, right? It wasn't the big things, it was the copyright that allows the intercultural exchange, that allows artists to own and protect their rights, for sure. Wati, I also want to ask you a question about what is the percentage of the authors or performers you think signing with a label as compared to an independent artist in Malaysia? What's the proportion?
I asked my pool whether they have got the data, but somehow we have not a complete data with regard to independent level. But if you look at those that sign up as with the CMO, those who are members of the CMO, I think the numbers went up to about 3,000 plus, for example, in terms of artists who sign up with MACP. But in terms of what is the percentage for independent level and those are with the major, shall we say, brand, I do not have the statistic. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. I think here on the panel we have a good mix of opinions here, which is always great to see. Let's move on to our third. Was there something else anyone wanted to mention? We're okay? Okay, we're going to talk about the rise of brands. So you have a water bottle or you have your favorite cosmetic product. And even though the product is the same, depending on who might be advertising or whose face is on that product, it changes how you as a consumer spend your money, right? And a lot of times in the music industry, a lot of times musicians and creators are approached to work with brands. So Prashant, let me ask you, can you explain kind of this trend, you think, with brands and musicians and maybe some things that musicians need to be aware of in working with brands?
Okay, I think the rise of social media sort of contributed to brands, to artists, collaborations. I think from the days of, I would say Facebook is where it really started. I didn't see as much of a trend like this on Friendster, because Friendster was mostly community, you had your friends. But once, if you remember, Facebook started pages, right? They had people, artists signing up and creating pages. And suddenly you have, I remember my first assignment when I was still working in a corporate company. My boss told me, hey, could you research this girl named Lisa Surihani? Right, she's a Malaysian actress. For some reason, she's got like 1 million Facebook followers. I'm like, at that stage, I had no idea who Lisa Surihani is. Today, she's one of my good friends. But at that time, I did not know who she is, so I had to go and do a research. And you realize that there are a lot more people at that time with Facebook likes up to like 1 million, right? And today it's very common. You have your Instagram, your TikToks, your YouTube. There's so many. It has become a new form of media. And I think since 2000, when we were hit by COVID, the trends like quadrupled, right? Because brands were not able to spend on billboards, they were not able to spend on traditional medias, they started putting their money in digital. So you see a very, very huge influx in 2000 where brands were looking for artists, or now you have KOLs to work with to spread their brand messaging. Actually, it's just a new form of digital marketing. For the brands, it's a new advertising space, right? For the artists, it's a new revenue. It's a new revenue spot that opens up, right? Music becomes a vehicle for you to gain an audience, and then you make money through brands who would spend with you to educate your audience about the brand.
Yeah, this is a little different because it's something I get asked about a lot. Copyright is different also from rights of publicity or your portrait rights or the rights of your image. But a lot of times they are very intertwined because, as Prashant said, artists a lot of times are using their image to make money. Ahmad, you've worked as an artist as well. What are your thoughts about this trend of brands working with musicians and maybe some things people should be looking out for? Or do you have any thoughts?
I think it's something that's going to continue, right? It's not strange to me because for me it started out in hip hop music with Run DMC. They didn't work with the brand, but they had a song called My Adidas, right? And actually Adidas didn't pay them anything, but Adidas benefited tremendously from that. So I'm sure eventually the word will get around that, hey, maybe, can you mention, and I think that's how it starts, and I think that's how it will keep on going, I think, because we have musicians, we have artists now, creative people who have the attention of their fans, right? And so brands will want to try to capitalize these fans, this attention, and of course the artists will be able to monetize off that. So, I think they will come, we're at a stage now whereby, let's say Pepsi does not pay $100 million US dollars for Michael Jackson, but it will pay $10,000 for a whole bunch of influencers in a whole, across the board, visual artists, musicians, celebrities, actors and whatnot, to get eyeballs on the Pepsi brand, so to speak.
Absolutely. It is a platform that I think musicians need to be aware of and take advantage of. Kimmy, did you have something you wanted to add about brands?
Yes, I do. And I think music is another communication of languages. So imagine this, when a branding needs some promotion and marketing, sometimes it's not only the visual. They can just play with the sound and design that we custom or we created for it. And that's been the significant or the reminder of a brand. For example, I have one in Malaysia. I don't know whether I can mention it, but I still remember how to contact a Pizza Hut because of the jingles and the sound design they created with the number, the digits. So that's been an example when I say branding always associate with music, and that helps the stakeholder, singer, songwriter, composer to write music and to earn more and generate more income towards it. So this is very important. I think branding and music always works together, and that can help for the industry. That's how we leverage our income towards music and brands.
Yeah, because there is definitely a technological component here, as Prashant said. A lot has to do with the rise of social media and how now fans interact with the artists and vice versa as well. David, let's try to get you in here one more time. What are your thoughts on artists working with brands and some things maybe to be aware of coming from your perspective?
Yeah, well, brands are waking up to the fact that music is incredibly powerful. It has a fantastic effect on people. It can affect your emotion. It can make you dance. It can do all sorts of amazing things. People underestimate the power of music, but brands are they've understood that and are now very keen to use music with their products. If you take someone like Beyonce, she earns about 3 times as much from branding as she does from music. And she's worked with Chanel and L'Oreal and Pepsi and all sorts of people. But the thing is, if you're an artist and you're approached by a brand, you have to be very careful because your fans will hate it. Basically, they'll hate it. So you have to bring your fans with you. If you were a vegan, for example, you wouldn't want to be associated with a brand that had dairy products or meat products. So you have to, make sure that the product suits your sort of music and your sort of philosophy. So that's the important thing that I would say. But it can have an amazing effect. I remember talking to Sting's manager, who Sting had done a branding campaign with Jaguar cars. And as a result of that, he sold an extra 3 million albums. So it can be incredibly powerful. And in the early days, it's just things like free guitars or something like that, or participating in a talent competition or something like that. But be very careful with it. But it's very, very helpful and useful.
Thanks so much, David. It's something I come across as well as a musician, you have a platform and you have to be aware, is this brand something I want my face and my image to be associated with going forward? So that brings our second topic from inspiration to record to an end. We now move on to our third of 4 topics, which is knowing your rights or knowing your copyright, which is obviously why we are all here. Wati, let me ask you, how does Malaysian copyright legislation, how does it encourage authors and performers? And maybe you could also speak about the difference between the two as well.
Okay, the Malaysian Copyright Act has a very long history. So we start off, for example, from the common law in the UK, and then it become protected under statute. So it go through changes. Every time the government feel there is more provision that are required to protect the copyright owner, then changes are introduced. Just as, for example, when the Malaysian government felt that, well, we need to protect the performer. So the amendment were introduced. We become member of WPPT, we become member of WCT for the internet agenda, for example. Okay, so all the law there is actually very comprehensive there. Okay, the law that we have come up, because the backbone of the law is the international treaty that we are member. We are member of Bern, we are member of the TRIPS agreement, we are member of the WCT, WPPT, Marrakesh, and we are intending later to become member of Beijing so that we can give a whole support to our creative industry. But the law is as good as if the person who require the protection of the law understand it, what they can actually protect. And as mentioned, I'm quite sad of the fact that even though I've been teaching it for the last 38 years, there are always gaps or pools of person who does not understand the intellectual property or the copyright law. So there are situations whereby they don't understand, for example, with regard to their right as author, they are given by the law, their right as performer, they are introduced under Section 16, so they now have the right to control fixation of their work and authorization of their work as well. And also the fact that they are also not very clear about their right when they are entering an employer-employee relationship, for example, because this situation will, in a way, impact their right as author and owner of the work. We have seen such situation whereby author thought that because they are the creator of the work, that the copyright belongs to them, whereas they are working under a contract of employment and the copyright belongs to the employer. So then, when they get sued, they lost a lot of money defending such action. For example, because they do not know that there is a different form of creativity that are owned by employer-employee relationship, for example. So if they are clear, about that, then maybe they'll know better about their right. Because in Malaysia, the Copyright Act allow protection either through a civil action, meaning that you can go and sue yourself, get injunction, get damages, for example. Or you can also get assistance from the Enforcement Division. This we allow as well. And these are national treatment given to everybody who are member of the Bern Convention as well as the WTO agreement. So meaning that you can go make a complaint to the Enforcement Division. So the rule is that the Enforcement Division is to assist you to go and take action and to sue in court. And we also have an intellectual property court, which is equivalent to the session court. So there you can go and sue for your right. Enforcement can assist you as well. But then if you don't know your right, then nothing come of it. So you can just complain and complain and complain, but you don't have any avenue to go to court, for example, because you don't understand, for example, that the law is there to protect you. I give you one example, but this is on trademark matter, but just to give a very simple example. When I was doing this, outreach program for intellectual property for entrepreneur, so this young lady come and see me. She said that this particular brand that was called Bilal, my grandparent, my grandfather owned this. And we had been using it for 40 years for this particular trademark. And then I said, what happened? Well, then we found out that somebody were infringing it and then uses the same trademark. So what do? We changed our trademark. Instead of suing or getting assistance from the enforcement division, because the enforcement division also assists on trademark infringement, they sue. So they change the trademark, and the whole 40 years of goodwill go down the line. You see, this is the reason why, as educator in IP, I always say that, know your right, then you'll be better protected.
Yeah, because the law will provide the rights, but it's a whole nother thing then to register your rights here at MyIPO. And one thing that Wati mentioned about the Berne Convention and the Beijing, these are international treaties that the United Nations and WIPO has that member states prescribe to, and what happens is, it basically, if this state recognizes it, then this other country also has to recognize it as well. As we talked about in the beginning, it seems like there's a huge rise in independent artists here in Malaysia, which is great to see, but still, copyright awareness and registration is still relatively low. And Prashant, maybe from your perspective, I'd love to hear why do you think that is, and what needs to be done to encourage Malaysian creators to continue to register their copyright?
I think, so there are three main CMOs here in Malaysia. One protecting the copyright of the masters holder, the song audio masters holder. One representing writers and composers, and one more representing performers. Now, I have came across in my 13 years of business, I think maybe 5-6 years ago, I signed a few new artists, and I tell them, are you registered to collect your performance royalties? They look at me, and these are not new artists, means they have been around for maybe a good 4 or 5 years in the market, and they look at me, I'm like, what royalties are you talking about? I'm like, what? The first step is a lot of people don't even know that they're eligible for royalties.
Yep.
All right, this is not public knowledge, right? Why I'm saying it's not public knowledge because I spoke to a few American artist friends, right? And they told me that, hey, do you know in America we have this thing called Academy, right? So if you want to be an artist in America, you first go to the Academy. So when you go to the Academy, they bring out this, apparently they bring out this, I've not experienced it myself, but this is what hearsay, yeah? So they bring out this big book and they run through what's your genre, what's your subgenre, they look and they tell you, okay, under this genre and subgenre, these are the people in the industry, these are the composers, these are the authors, these are the labels if you want to, these are what you're eligible for. So there basically is a place where you can go as a musician or as a singer or as a music practitioner, to go and learn about your industry. All right, so here in Malaysia, if you become a performer, right, sometimes it's of the blue, right? Because of YouTube now, you suddenly become an international superstar overnight. But nobody is there to tell you your rights. Because as soon as you become that superstar overnight on YouTube, the labels will come after you.
Big sharks.
Yeah, everybody with a business mind will come after you because they want your rights. They want to make your money. And do they care about your rights? Unfortunately, I don't think so, right? So basically, there is no place for, unless people who register to go for seminars and listen and learn, that basically is no one body for me, at least I don't know of, that I can go and learn about what my rights are. How do I register my rights, right? So if I'm not mistaken, right, if I am an individual audio owner in Malaysia, for example, I have a song, and I distribute it with, for example, DistroKid in US, right? We have this online platform for distribution. When I register with DistroKid, that's for distribution to all the DSPs, right? The digital streaming platforms to collect audio from sales. But as an audio owner, I am not able to register if I'm individual audio owner, I'm not able to register my song with a CMO unless I go through a major label. If I might be wrong, but from a few years ago, from my knowledge, you are not able to, meaning so why are we deterring people from collecting their rights, right? So I believe that we have a long journey to educate people, hey, you are eligible for these rights. As soon as McDonald's play your music, All right? As soon as McDonald's plays the song over the stereo in their store, right? As the person who owns that music, you are eligible for royalties. As the singer of the song, you are eligible for royalties. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but if you are the bass player in the recording, you are eligible for royalties. If you are a backup vocalist in a song, you are eligible for royalties. If you are an arranger and you put beats in the song, you are eligible for royalties. But out of 100 people who put their music, their art into that piece of music, I would say maybe 7 of them is registered. 7 of them is collecting royalties. The other 93, they just want to be paid. You pay me, I'll come and put the bass in the song. And they forgot about these royalties because it might be small, right? The numbers might be small. It might be 30 ringgit a year or 50 ringgit a year. But if your song overnight becomes an international hit, you are talking about tens of thousands of ringgit, right? So a lot of people, they don't realize that, a lot of people don't realize that they have this royalty in place. Right? When I first came to the industry, I had to learn from point blank. I didn't know anything. I'm not from a music background. I'm from a corporate background. But I learned and I try to educate the new generation today. But I still think we are lacking a true one place, one stop center, one platform that is eligible, that really is a place for any new artist, any new composer, author, or a music practitioner to go to and say, hey, I'm a musician now. How do I earn my royalties? I think there needs to be a one-stop center and a lot of education, a lot of effort putting into building this center to help the future generation so that everybody's rights are protected.
Right, it's the CMOs that will then intercede on behalf of the artists, right? So registering your copyright is what really gives you kind of the superpower to then enforce your copyright. Kimmy, I also want to ask you about kind of the awareness of copyright in Malaysia. Like, why do you think that is, and what do you think needs to be done to continue to encourage registration of copyright here at My IPO?
Okay, first thing first, let's be realistic on this topic. How do you get to know about this copyright? It's not publicly known. It took me 11 years to understand the copyright. That is only because of the cases that I was doing to protect my husband's copyright. Then only I learned and I become the Interpol of the copyright matters. So initially, copyright is not an easy language or an easy learning process that you can adapt in just in one go or a snap. It took you a while, and it took a real person or individual who really want to teach you about it, not trying to be a shark and eating you. Throughout my journeys, I've learned about this copyright with the CMOs, especially with the previous GM of MECP, Miss Mary Yap. She taught me a lot. She even told me about how publishing works, and that's how I became a publisher. And then I learned with the several seniors industry people where they help and contribute about this knowledge on the PPM royalties for the master recording royalties. And then we also have recording performance royalties. So it took me 11 years throughout my journeys to understand clearly on copyright. During that time, I even not noticed there's a neighboring right. Later, I understand there's a segmented of copyright and neighboring right. So as what Prashant mentioned, it's best to have an academy that it could be work with the industry or the government industry to help us by build one academy or center that people can come and learn about the music industry or our industry itself that's stated with all the facts and the matters and also the law. So from there, we can change and we can grow better for a better industry. So this is very important thing. If the government can support us on having an academy, then you do not need Langkah Baru program to help you to understand your rights.
Hopefully soon. I think there are initial talks about a music council at the moment. I think the ministry is sort of like dabbling into it right now. I think it's very still early stages, but I do hope it develops into what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, we can pitch for it. So currently at the moment, most of the stakeholders that our friends or our batch, we learn towards this copyright through friends and also from like program Langkah Baru that we created. This is just to educate people. And users also need to learn about it too. It's not only the stakeholders, because we work mostly with users. So if the users does not understand this, it will be much more difficult for us to gain royalties or to gain our income and venture this business with them.
Right, I'm sure there's always got to be intersection between the private sector and as well as the public sector for musicians to thrive. Before we move on, I also want to ask Ahmad, from a former musician standpoint, Ahmad, what are your thoughts about the general awareness of copyright with Malaysian artists, and kind of like what Prashant and Kimia said, like what needs to be done to encourage musicians to be aware of their copyright?
Okay, I think what Prashant said, when you come in to the creative industry, you are coming in as we call a public. You know, when public, they don't really know, they don't understand, and they're generally not aware of what copyright is. You know, I mean, they vaguely hear stories about when artists either get paid a lot of royalties or when they don't get paid enough, right? Which is outliers. Normally, most creative people are somewhere in the middle, right? So there is not that much awareness, and there's not much wanting to know more. You know, wanting to know more. The situation changes when they get a little bit of knowledge and when they get their first royalty check. That's literally when you see the light bulb go above their head and go ting.
Or they get into problems.
Or they get into problems where their music, there's nobody defending it. You know, they don't register it, and there is a copyright problem, and the CMOs or their publishers cannot defend their rights or fight for them. That's when it happens. You know, for me personally, when I got my first royalty check, it's literally like, wow, you're going to pay me money to do something that I like to do. I'm like, wow, you know, and we get into it. And of course, you read stories of the people you admire who have these problems. So you're like, okay, if I want to be like him creatively, I want to be like them creatively, and I don't want to run into this problem. You know, so you take steps up, but you know, it takes a spark to make you more proactive, to make you want more to learn, and you know, I think we're all humans. We are selfish creatures. So if we can see the benefit in learning, then you will be motivated.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes the motivation is money, sometimes the motivation is protection of your copyright.
Right, and I don't think money is a bad motivator at all.
It's not.
Right?
It's not.
You know?
It's not.
It's great. I mean, it's great.
Right.
It's a mission.
Yeah, music has an inherent value, and you should be
Yep.
compensated accordingly, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
you know, one big part of copyright law is it encourages innovation. Because if you're just going to get your rights stolen, then why would you keep creating, right? So I think this is something very important for us to know.
Yeah, I can tell you a nice story about it. In maybe 2008, 2009, I discovered this ska band from Yogyakarta called Shaggy Dog, right? And I couldn't find the album anywhere. You know, so I liked it so much, I downloaded the album for free. So okay, I listened to it, and then maybe in 2016, I got to know that they were going to South by Southwest, and I was performing at South by Southwest. So I went to the show, right? So they are in America, and they're performing, and there's one guy in front that knows all the words to their songs. So they're like, who is this guy? So when they got on stage, I'm like, guys, in 2008, 2009, I downloaded your album. Here's the $100 US. And like, no, our album don't cost that much. I'm like, no. This is how much I enjoy your music.
And I appreciate
it. Please, you know, I take the money, do whatever you want. I say, man, we're going to go and buy some drinks. Go, this is your money. You know, it's not mine anymore, you know. So that is, I think, we need to start thinking about it in that way, that if we appreciate it, you know, we show them, you know, by streaming it, by buying merchandise or however it is, but they need to know.
We need to teach them how to respect our IP, how to appreciate our IP, and how to make it legal, legit.
Yeah.
No, download it.
Absolutely. Let me now transition to our subtopic here, which is we're talking about the importance of contracts. You know, not everybody will always use contracts, but it's a really useful mechanism to know your rights and to write it down and to be clear, right? David, I'm going to bring you into this conversation about contracts. You know, with copyright, you'll see kind of two main terms, assigning your rights and licensing your rights. Could you explain the difference between the two, as well as maybe things artists should be aware of in licensing contracts?
Sure. Well, the difference between licensing and assignment, if you're assigning your rights, you're really selling them. So it's like if you've got a car and you sell it to somebody, it's not your responsibility anymore. They may let you use it, but it's their responsibility. It's not yours anymore. You don't own it. That's assigning rights. If you're licensing rights, you retain the ownership of the rights, and the other party can use those rights or exploit those rights, and they can pay you royalties or whatever. But basically, the ownership stays with you. So, as an author or performer, it's always better to license. Always better to license because you retain the ownership of the copyright. Now, major record companies will insist you assign it. And that's when you have to make a commercial decision. Is it worth signing with this company? Are they going to do more for my career, even though I'm assigning them the rights? And I assign them the rights, but they will be paying me royalties still, but they will own the rights and I won't. So that's the important difference between licensing and assignment. And wherever possible, always license and try not to assign.
Thanks, David. One quick thing, you'll see a lot of licensing contracts in this music industry, right? Or contracts with platforms or brands. Are there any clauses or anything else that you think musicians should always be aware of? Kind of like what you said about the difference between assignments and licensing. Any pitfalls that we should be aware of?
Well, I mean, when you're trying to negotiate a contract, it's always really important to have independent legal advice. Someone like yourself, Derek, I hope you get some business out of this. But try and get a lawyer who is independent. When I say independent, I mean that they aren't also representing the other side, as it were. They are independent of the situation. That's really important. Try to have a limited term if possible. Avoid in perpetuity and try to avoid buyouts as well. I say that, but I was talking to a manager recently who Disney wanted to use one of their songs, very big artist, and they said, but we have to own the copyright. And they said, well, we don't do that. I'm sorry, we don't assign copyright, And they said, well, how about $2 million? And they said, well, hold on a minute, $2 million. Okay, we'll agree a buyout. So, there's always a point where it makes sense. But yeah, get a lawyer. I mean, that's the bottom line. Get a lawyer who's friendly and knows what they're talking about, and not just any old lawyer. It has to be a music business lawyer.
Yeah. The language.
Kimmy, go ahead, yes.
Okay. Well, legal language is not a common language. We don't speak legal language our daily.
Yep.
So we don't understand. And most of them will not understand. Perpetual means perpetuity, lifetime of your lifetime license. They don't understand it. And licensing and auto renewal, they would not understand this. And many lawyers who are not IP lawyers
Also don't
would not be,
understand.
they also don't understand this. So music industry, music language is, entertainment language is very vast, very different from the usual language. So sometimes you think you know about it, but you don't. And when you think that you want to do it, but when people say seek for a legal advice, and they will start to be skunk, like, what, legal advice? That would be money matters calculation, and I would not get more. So they are afraid of getting a lawyer or expert to help them on this. So this is the wrong example yang what they have done. So this need to be prevented. You need to get an expert who understand the language. You need to get expert people who can tell you about your rights and the usage of this license or the agreement. So your rights are still protected. It still belongs to you. You can still compensate it by getting your royalties every year until the lifetime of the duration copyright. They just need to understand that you, in copyright world, you have a lifetime copyright duration. Use it, benefit it from them, because this is like not going to be only on your year. It could be for your grandchildren or for your heirs. So take it. This is the best law ever compared to other law, copyright.
No, it is a lot of fun. Unfortunately, all law is, it's pretty simple concepts, just masqueraded in very difficult language. Like royalties is just money, ultimately.
Yeah.
You know, or you say in perpetuity, it just means for life.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of times lawyers will use the fancy terms so they can charge you expensive fees. You
Yeah,
know?
and they keep on repeating it. Yeah.
But also make sure to take advantage of my IPO and the resources they have here as well. Before moving on from this topic, Professor Wazi, like we mentioned, copyright is not just one, it's a bundle of different rights.
Yes.
Production rights, mechanical rights, moral rights, etc. Can you talk about some of these rights that you'll see in contracts and what artists can then license with those rights?
Okay, so let's talk about the work that you have got. Let's say that you are the composer and then you had then created this musical work. So now you want to license it because, as mentioned, if you assign it, it means a total sale. So you have no control. So it's always best to have it licensed. So let's say that you want to give license to one performer, one recording industry, let's say to sing the song. So then you enter into a contract with them, okay? And then you look into how much is the price or the consideration that they are willing to pay to use your work, okay? And then have a contract that is very specific only for that particular utilization of that performer. Meaning that this is non-exclusive for their use for a particular term of duration. And then later, let's say that your song become popular, so a film producer wanted to use it as a background music. Then you can enter into another license with regard to the utilization of that same song in the film, for example. Or somebody wanted to do, let's say, at Istana Budaya, a stage show. And they also wanted to use the same song. So you can actually enter into different licensing contracts. If you are the owner of that musical work and you only license the right. But what some artists do is, as you mentioned, Derek, they don't know this bundle of rights. So what they do is that they license out everything, for example, to one particular recording company. So everything that can be utilized from that work, for example, no longer need their permission, but it need the recording company permission. So then they wonder, why are we no longer in control? Because they don't know that they have actually assigned all their rights in the contract itself to the recording industry. So that's why, like you mentioned, for example, and as Kimi mentioned, it'd be good, for example, if someone at the IP office, for example, can have some sort of, assistant to young artists, for example. Because I remember a long time ago, in the year 97, when in Malaysia, when everything about intellectual property was all jumbled up. People were talking about patenting their book, for example. So there was confusion regarding copyright, patent, industrial design, trademark, that the Malaysian government decided to come out with a task force that we do what we call roadshow throughout Malaysia. And I participate in that. So we did roadshow from the year 1997 until 2004, you see, for a long time, whereby the IP office play a very important role. We visited school, we visited university, everybody who wanted to know about IP, to educate them. So now there is a growth with regard to patent application. So similarly, if the IP office is willing to take the initiative, for example, to come up with a very specific, shall we say, help desk, okay, to assist our performer, our artists in terms of understanding their right, in terms of basic understanding of contract. After all, this IP office has got a lot of lawyers, okay, so they can give that assistance. I mean, take it as for the future of our generation, to know their law and to be given the adequate protection.
No, very well said, Professor Wati. Thank you so much for that. We're now going to move on to our fourth and our final topic here. It's how to make a living off music. Like we said, music has an inherent value, which means that we should be compensated and we should be recognized for our work here. We're going to start our conversation talking about royalty collections. Again, royalty is basically just getting paid. It's just money, fancy way of saying money. With that comes CMOs, or collective management organizations. Prashant, could you talk a little bit about the role of CMOs, and maybe in Malaysia, what's preventing some artists from registering with CMOs?
Okay, so the role of a CMO is to collect on your behalf. Okay, so you
Performing
assign
royalties.
your
Performing
performance royalties, right? So for example, broadcast, for example, if your song is playing on TV, the CMOs must collect for you. Your songs are playing on radio, the CMOs must collect for you. The songs are playing on
Live event.
an event, Coldplay concert. The CMO's job is to make sure that royalties are paid. And so that when the CMOs collect, like I said before, the artists of the songs are paid. The composers, the authors of the songs are paid. The people who played music in the song are paid. The people who wrote the song are paid. You know, everybody is paid if your CMO collects on your behalf. Now, I think that in general, as I've seen across a lot of young people, the first problem that is deterring people from signing up with CMOs is the knowledge. They don't know what the CMOs are, right? Like, I only found out about CMOs when I first had a record label. Oh, there's money, I have to go register. Then I started educating myself and learning, right? So a lot of people don't know. So when you don't know, you don't sign up. That's the first thing. Now, the second deterrent, personally to me, I think, is when people, oh, I know there's a CMO, but how are they paying these royalties out? Now, we until today, I fail to understand the CMO's payout structure. Until today, I fail to understand. I mean, I might not have dug enough or spent enough time because I run a business, right? But I think a lot of transparency is needed in a market where we can understand how the CMOs, like, if I give my rights to this CMO to collect on my behalf, am I going to be paid fairly? All right, how are they tracking how is my song being played? Where is my song being played? So there are questions like this that we can't find answers to. So I think that's another deterrent. But generally, I think people want to get paid. Like you said, it's money, right? Who doesn't want money? So people want to get paid. So the first deterrent is not knowing that there are CMOs, or not knowing what rights do I have. Who should I which CMO should I register with? You know, there are like I said, so many types. There are 3 CMOs and so many types of different categories. So you must know which one you are eligible to sign up for. When I sign an artist, I tell them, hey, you're eligible for this, go sign up. But if they don't, I don't go force them because I don't make money from them collecting royalties. The most I can do is advise, hey, you are eligible for this thing called RPM. Please go and find out, download the form, fill up and submit, and register yourself. But I'm not gonna print out the form, download it, print it out, call you for a meeting, come sign here and send the form over. I don't benefit from it. I'm not gonna do it for you. You gotta learn, and through that process, go get yourself registered and claim your royalties. So for me, I believe that these are the main deterrents. Everybody thinks that there is not big enough money to register, but people don't forget that if you are a career songwriter or you're a career artist, in the long term, that small figures adds up, and it could be big at one time. Like to my knowledge, I have a friend who wrote a hit song from 30, 40 years ago. All right, one hit song. In his whole career, he wrote one hit song. The rest are songs that didn't make it a hit. But that hit song made it so big that until today, his MACP checks every year is like 10,000 ringgit. Right? 10,000 is about 2,500 US dollars. And he gets that every year just for that one hit song. And he's in his 60s now and he's still receiving the money. All right. And when he passes on one day, his children will receive the money. Right. So that's the beauty of the copyright law as mentioned by Kimi earlier. Right. So after you pass, your rights are being protected for a further 50 years. So in that 50 years, your children or your grandchildren for that off will receive your royalties. So you're not just working for yourself, you're registering not just for yourself, but for the future generation as well. So yeah, get yourself registered.
No, definitely. And I believe, is it the life of the author in Malaysia plus 50 years?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. In the US, it's the life of the author plus 70.
75.
70, yeah.
75 or
75.
70?
70.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of, that's a lot of money
Yeah.
that you're not taking advantage of, right? So definitely registering CMOs is very helpful for musicians. Kimmy, you've probably worked with a lot of CMOs as well. What do you think is the benefit there, and any other, what are preventing other artists in Malaysia from engaging with CMOs?
Okay, I think what prevents them from signing is the mind thing. When they're doing things just for their passionate in music, I'm just doing it for music, I'm not doing it for my own academic income. That's where this hold them from registering it. And second, well, you must understand, okay, I'm married to one person, stakeholder, okay, everyone. So marrying with one person, I understand the time schedule are different from a usual people like us. They work at night, they live in the morning. I live in the morning, they sleep in the morning. So doing this official matter, officiate things matters, is always on the normal official hour. Sometimes because of that as well. Not blaming the office time schedule, but these are the creatures. These creatures, they live at night. They don't really live in the morning. It's hard to find them in the morning. So perhaps we can find some solution also to help them during the evening and night time. Perhaps this is just one saying because I married one, right? About the rest, I have to second what Prashan said because it is their own individual will. If they don't do it, they don't learn, they don't self-learn about it, that's the one that stopped them from registering with CMO. And CMO has been trying their very best to do some awareness and some talk and even road show, right? Road show about these IPI things. But like I said, the language must be different from the stakeholders. Maybe you guys need to, or CMO need to sing a song or do some sound and design advertisement jingles to work and to make them understand their function and do an awareness for them, like dialing this number, Pizza Hut, it could help.
Yeah, I
it's
always told
flexibility.
collective society, when I'm teaching students, collective society collects money. So that sort of ring a bell. Oh, collect money, yeah, they collect for you. So you better register yourself. So
Right.
you can get your income.
Yeah, in last month in Korea, we had a lot of developing island countries that had zero CMOs. And we had to convince a lot of them, why do we need CMOs? And we said, as long as there's brick and mortar shops in your country where they can play music, there needs to be a CMO, right? So if you're at the gym, you're at the supermarket, and they're playing your song, you should be getting paid for it, right? David, I'm going to bring you in here on this conversation before we move on to about standing out and entertainment. David, let's talk a little bit about royalties, about collecting royalties on different music platforms and streaming. What's the best way for musicians to be able to collect their royalties?
Sure. Well, I always like to think of the music industry as train tracks, two train tracks. On the left-hand side, you have authors, rights, and publishers. On the right-hand side, you have record companies and performers. They're two separate things. They have two separate sorts of rights. They have separate histories. If you were going to license from a streaming service and you were an author, you would need to do it through your publisher and your CMO, the author's CMO in your country, which in the case of Malaysia is the MACP. If you haven't got a publisher, you would do everything through the MACP. But that's the only way you can collect on streaming services. You can't join a streaming service on your own. You have to do it through a publisher or a CMO. On the performer's side, if the only way to get money off a streaming service is via the record company or via a digital distributor. Now, a digital distributor is what most independent artists use, and they will pay you like 100 up to 100% of the money for a small annual fee. DistroKid, for example, are a good example of that, or CD Baby. They are digital distributors. They have agreements with all the streaming services, in fact, 50 around the world. So as soon as you join up with them, and it's very easy to do that, you'll be on 50 streaming services all over the world. You also need to join the CMOs for performers and record companies. So if you're an independent artist and you were performers and you had your own label, then you would need to join two CMOs. You'd need to join PPM, which is the record company CMO in Malaysia, and you'd need to join RPM, which is the performer CMO in Malaysia. So that's how you get your money off platforms. It's very complicated sometimes, but it's pretty straightforward once you understand it.
All right, thank you so much, David, for that. Let's move on to our second subtopic. It's about standing out as a musician. I am a millennial myself, and a lot of my elderly lawyers kind of talk about why are you young people so tech savvy or so social media savvy about putting yourself out there? Well, the reason I say is the world has changed in how we interact, and I think there is an element now that you have to put yourself out there to be able to promote yourself and obviously make a living. Ahmad, you've worked as an artist yourself, and obviously you've seen how social media has changed many things. What's your advice to up-and-coming artists about how do you stand out in this online age where there's just so much content? How do you stand out as an artist?
Right, I think it's got a lot to do with who you are as a person, your personality, and also the kind of art that you want to put out. It's about knowing yourself, knowing your art, and then you know your audience as well. And the only thing that's left is what you need to find out what's the best platform, right? Personally, for me, being somebody who creates music that is more lyric-driven, right? My personality is drawn towards Twitter, which is more text-based, right? And if you can see people who are more interested in being celebrities, they go for more visually oriented platforms, right? So it's a bit of that. But if I can caution anyone, it's about knowing yourself, and whatever you put out there, you can't take it back, right? So you got to think about it, and whatever you put out there, you have to be able to live with it. You have to be able to sleep at night. Right? I chose not to talk about my personal life, and to a certain extent, I paid the price in terms of not being that much of a celebrity, right? So that has kind of limited my earning potential somewhat, but I'm able to sleep at night. It is a price that I'm willing to pay.
It's a choice.
It's a choice. Like entertainment project, hey, we want to do a photo shoot of your house and your family. I say, no, that's my happy place. You don't disturb, I don't bring my work into it, so and they go like, if we can't cover you, you be less famous. I'm like, cool, I'm going to pay that price. So you need to know yourself, right? And whatever decision you make, as always, not just being a creative, not trying to be an entertainer, just as a human being, you have to take the consequences that come with all your decisions and your actions.
Right. If you don't know yourself, then you're not going to be sure what you're putting yourself out
Exactly.
into the world, right?
Exactly.
No, I think that's a very good point. And with putting yourself out into the world, a lot of that has changed because in the past it was all live events, right? You had to rent out a venue and get all the technical stuff done. Now a lot of it's done online. And I'm going to ask this both on the Malaysian perspective, but also I want to hear from David about live events. David, do you think live events are still a good way to promote in an age where things are so digital and so tech media savvy?
Yeah, it's incredibly important. And I think to learn how to play live and to learn how to react with an audience is absolutely essential. And people, even like the Rolling Stones, have been doing it for 60 years or whatever, are still learning how to play live and how to get the most out of an audience, how to get a great reaction from an audience. So it's a really, really fundamental and important thing to understand. In the old days, we used to tour to sell records. Now we sell records to tour because the money is definitely in touring at the moment, particularly if you can build up a fan base. I remember there was an artist, a British artist called Imogen Heap, and she, very savvy with social media. Suddenly, from her analytics, you could see that in Indonesia she was quite popular. So she asked her booking agent to contact the promoter in Indonesia to see if she could play live. And he said, yes, we've done our research. Yes, we'd love to have her play live. They put her into a 4,000 capacity venue and she sold it out completely. Never been to Indonesia before or anything. So that just shows you how social media and the whole digital age and live interact. And it's actually, that was the biggest concert she'd ever done in her career. She's an English artist, but she'd never done anything like that in the UK. So it's incredibly important to play live, and I would thoroughly recommend focusing on it.
Yeah, I think live events will never go away, and instead live events have to work in tandem together with online content, right? Yeah. Which is why, Prashant, I want to ask you maybe from the Malaysian perspective, and you working for an entertainment agency, what's the role of live events in an age where there's so much online content?
Well, I believe that music speaks not only to your ears, but also to your soul. And you will not understand it until you stand in the middle of a concert, listening to your favorite song and feeling it emotionally, right? So personally, I like to tell people this experience, right? I went for my first Coldplay concert, I think it was last year in Bangkok. So I stood there in a Coldplay concert, watching the concert from start till end, and I cried 4 times in the concert. You don't do that watching a YouTube video, you get what I mean? That emotion that is transferred from the music, from the synth, from the bassist, from the drummer, from the singer, and his interaction with the crowd, how he speaks to you, how he tells you a story from his music when he's singing live. It's different with the recording, right? With the Sonar recording, we like, be as perfect as you can because this song is going to go on radio. When we listen it on a recording, in a phono recording, it's done perfect. In this digital world, every recording is perfect, on beat, on point, everything is perfect. But when you play live, it's not perfect. It's emotionally driven when one performs live, right? So if you are really selling music, because you need to know where you stand, right? If you are an artist selling music, your music needs to speak to people. It's different with K-pop. K-pop, your moves, your choreograph, your outlook, that speaks to the audience. So you need to be pitch perfect when you are dancing. You need to be pitch perfect when you are performing, right? So as an internet celebrity who sings for fun, there are artists out there who they are not serious in their music, but they just release music as a vehicle. For them, they need to know what's important to them, right? Maybe their outlook, they need to be pretty, they need to keep themselves looking good. It's a different world. Like they want to attract brands and not shows. But if your main core business is music, meaning you want to get booked for shows, you want people to listen to your music, then you have to do live shows because that's when your music actually speaks to an audience. So I think it's very important to know from an art, when you say you're an artist, what kind of artist are you? From which standpoint? Where are your main earning points? Where are your main income points? By knowing that, you'll be able to know what is important for you to do to further your career in music. Like I said, if you are an actor, you want to be on screen as much as you can. As a singer, it really doesn't matter how good you look, to be honest, in the world, right? Today, there are some songs that you listen to, you don't even know if the singer walks past you, you don't even know who they are. But if they play the song, you'll be like, oh shit, that's one of my favorite songs, right? Music has this different way of reaching out to people. And I believe as an artist, you need to know that. I always tell Malaysian artists who come to me and ask this question, that how do I put myself out there, right? Don't syok sendiri. Syok sendiri is a Malaysian term for don't do it for yourself. You are not, if you are writing just for yourself, then you listen to your own music in your bedroom, right? Play it for yourself, listen and smile and clap, and pay yourself. But if your whole idea is making music into your career, you need to know who your audience is. You are writing for them. You are writing songs to speak to people. People need to feel your music, feel your writing. And that's how you get discovered. That's how your music can make money. Yeah, so we're a bit off topic, but yeah.
No, not at all. I mean, it's a product, right?
Yeah.
Music is a product that we should be recognized for, I think. And unfortunately, there is a big reason that copyright exists is that there is a lot of illegal streaming and people who unlawfully take advantage of copyright as well. So stemming illegal streaming, I want to ask this to Professor Wati. As an educator, what are some things you educate your students on about illegal streaming and copyright infringement? And what needs to be done to prevent illegal streaming?
Okay. I always tell my students that illegal streaming still amount to copyright infringement if it's done without permission of the owner. And I think it boils down to the individual themselves. I mean, if you have respect for somebody else's property, okay, then you wouldn't do it, isn't it? Unless you pay for it, for example. Okay? Because the law provides that illegal streaming will still amount to copyright infringement if it's done without permission. And we know that even the Malaysian Copyright Act has got provision for the ISP, for example, so that if there are illegal streaming that goes through, for example, the ISP, you have the right there as copyright owner for notice and takedown procedure, for example, and the ISP must assist you, or else you can just sue the ISP for copyright infringement. So the law is there to protect all the individual, but I agree that sometimes you have very good law, but because they don't have it instilled in them that this is taking somebody else's property, that somebody else is making a living out of that. They need that living to pay their daily expenses, their house expenses, the education of their children. So if there are this instilled in them, this need to respect property belonging to other people, I think we don't have to worry so much about copyright infringement. We don't need the enforcement division, for example. So everybody, out of respect, for example, like what our YB has said, you pay $100 because he had downloaded the music a few years back, for example.
Eventually got his royalty.
Instill in him the fact that he respects somebody else's property. So if all of us in Malaysia, for example, and all over the world had the same respect for property belonging to other person, then I think forget about enforcement division. So the money can be used for other purposes, for example.
Right, if the respect was there, you might not need the enforcement.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a much more cost-effective way to go, I think. Kimmy, I want to ask you, have you dealt at all with illegal streaming or maybe expired copyright at all in your...
Well, yes. Under publishing, under the publishing administration, we do face this kind of activities like people took over or play or do some cover without a proper license. The best part being a music publisher, because we work for the songwriter and it's under copyright, right? So for example, if our songs, we see that it's been covered in the YouTube or any other platform, we can actually send a strike. Publisher have a license and access to send a strike to their pages. So we strike them off. So I have one person who handled that part. And then they will come back to us and give us like queries and, oh, I'm so sorry for doing this infringement. So what can I do and what can I cover it by compensate us again. So that's one of the teaching lessons that we do by striking people on the YouTube or any media social. But again, like what Prof said, the moral understanding on the respect of this copyright is not an easy task. And it will take wonder years until everybody learn and start to educate and really live with this moral ethics by respecting other people copyrights. So until we see that particular year, we still have to do the activity enforcement by striking and do some summon or teach them a lesson through this infringement.
Right, it's a multifaceted process. There's enforcement, but then you need respect, like Professor Wati said, and then before that, you just need to know what copyright is. So
Yeah.
there's an education component as well. I'm going to bring in David here because I think, David, you also want to talk about illegal streaming and maybe what needs to be done to prevent illegal streaming.
Yeah, well, one of the themes of this chat seems to be education and how important it is for musicians to understand how the whole system works. And that's true in schools and all sorts of different platforms and areas. It's really important that young people understand the value of music. Music has value. You know, it's a very, very valuable thing. You wouldn't go down to the supermarket and just start stealing stuff. Well, some people do, but but you wouldn't normally do that. But people, so back if you go back to 2007, where there was 90% of all music consumed in the world was illegal, that was a real problem. Now, what Daniel Ek did with Spotify is he created a platform that was more convenient to people than the pirates. So people are prepared to pay for it because it was more convenient. And that was the turning point of the entire music industry. And that's why Spotify is the biggest streaming service in the world today. Um, as you mentioned, I do workshops all around the world on how to make a living from music. I'm doing Dubai and Abu Dhabi next week, and I'd love to come to Malaysia and do one in KL. It would be fantastic, but we'll see if that's going to be possible or not.
Well, I'm sure they would love to have you here, David, so thank you so much for that. This concludes the main part here, but before we go, we're going to have a quick conclusion about the future, the challenges, and the opportunities for the Malaysian music industry. If we could just go down the line, maybe starting with Kimmy, and then just go straight down the line. There's really kind of two things we'd maybe like to touch on as briefly as possible about the challenges and the opportunities for the Malaysian music industry, as well as what needs to be done to continue to export Malaysian music around the world. So, Kimmy, if you could start us off, and then we'll just go right down the line.
Well, I think the most important thing on how to sustain our it's evening time. I'm so sorry. Okay, initially I think the best thing to do is start teaching everyone. Educate yourself, educate your user, educate your friends about what you are doing in this music industry, and then spread this thing as an awareness. Because this is not a simple topic like what we mentioned earlier. And by doing that, it helps the growth of the industry. It helps the growth of the education to every aspect from the students as well. We need the government sector to help us in giving this syllabus of the copyright awareness to the school kids, because this digital technology has killing all these physical things. So we are on digital. So if this syllabus started from the primary school, it might help to less the infringement or the awareness issues. That's one. And second, for those copyright owner, make use of this digital platform. There's a variety of incomes derived from everywhere, especially for the music sectors. And be like Ahmad, respect others and try to compensate them whenever you need. Go to you, Matt.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kimmy. Ahmad, our model citizen here, I guess, right?
Yes, I pay all my taxes.
Yeah.
Pros and cons,
The challenges, the opportunities for the Malaysian music
Alright.
industry, and
Okay,
then what needs to
okay.
be done to continue exporting it around the world.
Right. I think challenges and the opportunities stem from the same thing, which is, if you read this book called "The World Is Flat," that's exactly what is happening. Right? There are no more gatekeepers for music, except now the gatekeepers will be the algorithm and the end user itself, him or herself. those are the people that will decide whether I want to consume your music or not, right? And they can just, if I don't like it, I can just hit next and next and next. You know, gone are the days where you save money and buy one album a month, and that's it. If you buy a bad album, that's it lah. One month you have to listen to a mediocre album. You know, those days are gone. That presents challenges and opportunities. Opportunities in the sense that anyone can become a creative now. But the challenge would be how to cut through the noise and cut through these gatekeepers and reach the end user itself. So if you want me to summarize it, you know, if you want to take one example is, you heard of this rapper called Hanuman Kind or not? And he just performed in Coachella, right? So if I was maybe 25 and you tell me a rapper from India was going to perform at Coachella, if Coachella exists at that time, I say you're crazy. That's nuts, right? And we have seen this happening, is going back. You know, if you want to take an example, breakdancing started in America, right? And eventually the innovators, the one who progressed breakdancing came from Europe. And then they came from Korea and Japan. You know, so we are heading back that way. You know, like if you're talking about streetwear came from America, right? And in maybe the mid-2000s, the mid-noughties, you have American rappers wearing a Japanese brand, Bathing Ape. So it's going there. So that is a result of the world flattening. So that is going to happen, you know. And I look forward to the day whereby we will have, you know, our creative will cross over regionally within the continent and outside of the continent that is known as Asia. And hopefully we can, you know, in the grand scheme of things, I don't want to be too boring, but I hope that we can increase the percentage of contribution towards the GDP from the creative industry. But right now it's 2%. What is that? You know, I want it to be 6% at least. My dream. Yeah.
Absolutely, no big dreams, and I think this live chat can definitely be a start for a lot of those conversations that need to happen. Wati, challenges and opportunities for the Malaysian
For
music
me, I
industry.
start off with the opportunity. Because as mentioned, the world is now flat and then we have about 10 billion world population. And with internet, everything is accessible everywhere. So if you have a good music, all over the world, people will be using your music, listening to your music. And if it's prepared well, you get paid for it. So that will be your opportunity. So the challenges will be, well, understanding the legal regime, how to protect your right, understanding your contract law. Okay? So this will be thing that you have to do yourself. As Prashant said, you want the money, you go, register yourself, understand your right, so you be better in terms of protecting whatever you have got. Because you cannot just rely all the time on the government, because you have to do self-reliant. After all, we are talking about protecting your property. We are talking about you getting income out of it. The government will be very happy if you get a lot of income, because then you pay tax. Like YB said, he paid all his tax. So then when you all pay your all tax, the income that you collect from this whole world streaming, for example, then Malaysia going to be having a lot of resources. You see? That's what I think on the grand scale.
Absolutely. I think we all need to realize that copyright is the bedrock to all this, right? It's what makes this happen because it protects the rights and encourages innovation to keep going. Prashant, could you just send us off here, the challenges, the opportunities for the Malaysian music industry, and maybe what needs to happen to continue to export it around the world?
Right. I think it's a fairly big topic to end with, right? But I'll try to be as concise as I can, as short as possible, right? One of the main challenges that I see in the music industry in general today is there's a lot of politics involvement, unfortunately, right? What I mean is, in the 70s, 80s, and maybe early 90s in Malaysia, right? I talk about live music, for example, right? There used to be a lot of avenue where places that you can go and listen to music. There was places like Planet Hollywood, there's places like Hard Rock, and I think the ship, but the ship still does it a bit today. Yeah, but there are a lot of avenues for live concerts, right? And this is the same in US, Europe, anywhere in the world. You have a lot of places where you start playing music for your music to be heard. All right, so this is a challenge in Malaysia, right? As of I think it's in the 90s, it became a taboo for a lot of people to go to pubs and clubs to listen to music because of alcohol involved, right? But you know, I love Nusantara music, right? And my main music that I listen to, which my wife till today next to me about, is I listen to Malay music, I listen to Indonesian music, and that's in my blood, right? In my soul, that's what I listen to. And when I go to a place like Indonesia, I recently went to a live house in Indonesia, watched a band called Baku Cakar. They're amazing band, right? They're a band of a lead singer. Amazing band, and people were drinking and enjoying the music. And that's how music, blends into your soul, when you're having a good time. So I think something needs to be done about the live house infrastructure in Malaysia. You need to find a way to have more venues to support music, whether it's alcohol or no alcohol. There just needs to be more places where people can play music. I think that's one of the main challenges I see. Opportunities, I think Malaysians need to start thinking a little bit out of the box. All right, we always think that when our music makes it into the world is when an artist becomes big. All right, where an artist wins an award or an artist becomes an international artist. It's not necessary. Music, there's so many ways to make money from music. Today, if you are a very, very good producer or an arranger, all right, and if you arrange a song for Blackpink, the Malaysian economy will benefit from that. Meaning that you will get money from that. Or if you're an author, such a good songwriter, and you wrote a song and Bruno Mars sings it, the Malaysian economy will benefit from it. People will make money from it. It doesn't have to be just a singer who needs to be big internationally to say that, Malaysian music is good. Yes, of course, if you have the infrastructure like how Korea has and K-pop has gone to take over the world, the whole culture and tourism, everything booms at the same time. Yes, but if you don't, think out of the box. There are other ways to make music, right? Even in Malaysia, you don't know, right? There are Malaysian artists, Malaysian bassists, Malaysian percussionists who tours around the world with international artists. Where do they spend their money? They bring back their money to Malaysia and they spend it here. It helps our economy. So think out of the box. Don't just think that our industry will be big when an artist becomes international, but if you're an international songwriter, it will benefit the country. If you are an international musician, it will benefit the country. There are many ways to help the industry grow. Don't have a one-line mindset. All right. In terms of exporting music, I always say this. Malaysia has in amazing opportunities to put their music out there. Internationally. Why? In the internet, for once, is a platform where you can put your song anywhere. And because of our diverse background in music, right? We have English music, we have Malay music, we have Chinese music, we have Tamil music. This music can be exported, right? With the right resources, with the right people behind it, this music can be exported. But of course, I mentioned right. All right, so there really needs to be an infrastructure put in place for people who wants to export their music. All right, anybody listening in could tell, like Ahmad here, when he went on tour to South by Southwest, one of the biggest tours in the world, he paid it out of his pocket. He had to search and grind and hustle for money just to tour, just to put his music, just to put Malaysian music on an international map. He had to struggle to do it himself. Correct me if I'm wrong. Right? Today, a lot of you don't know, we have another artist named Zamira who's going to South by Southwest this year. Last year, we had Lunadira. We have a lot of artists trying to export their music, but why isn't resources being put to help them? They are as good as an artist by themselves, but if there is an infrastructure put behind them to assist them to grow their markets, grow their influence internationally, I believe they can go further. So this is I think, shout out to the government, to the bodies that are involved in music. Please find a way to support the industry a little bit better. I hope really to see Malaysian export more music. We have a Malaysian artist, which is one of my artists, who has done a song during MCO, and the song currently is 295 million streams on YouTube, and 90% come from Indonesia. And I am struggling to find resources. How do I promote her further in Indonesia? So I think the resources needs to be put behind by the people who have the power to make more of this happen. So exporting music, there needs to be more people with power to actually help push it. But aside from that, yes, use your online tools, do YouTube, use YouTube advertising, whatever you need to do, put your music out there. If your music goes, whoever you are, if you're a competitor to me, if your music makes it internationally, I'm proud, because I'm proud to say that music is Malaysian.
Well, thank you so much, Prashant. Thank you to everybody else for your contributions here. We might have some time for a few questions here from our live audience. Maybe a few. Oh, well, actually, no, I can't forget David, of course. David.
Thank you. Hey, thank you very much, man. I just want to say how impressed I am with Prashan and his vision of the music industry in Malaysia. I think he spoke really, really well there, as did all the panel. But basically, if you want to have success, first of all, get a unique name, make sure nobody else has got it, build a fan base. There was that book about if you have 1,000 true fans, you can live off them for the rest of your life. And if you look after them with social media and everything else. The other thing is do collaborations in Malaysia, but also international. The internet is global. Not all days where you had to move to London or you had to move to New York, Nashville, to make it in the music business. Anybody can do it from anywhere. When Psy recorded Gangnam Style, I'm sure he didn't realize that his video was going to be the most watched video for 10 years on YouTube internationally. I mean, the song wasn't even in English, but it was the most viewed video for 2 years and actually has now got over 5 billion views. So it does to where you are.
David, I think we're going to have to cut you off here. We lost you there, but we might have you here for a question or two. But that concludes our main session, but we might have some time for a few questions from our live audience. And Andy and our folks in the back, I'm not sure if we have a mic that's going to go around. Do we have any live? Oh, we got a mic back there for live questions. Excellent. Do we have any questions for our 4 panelists or David? Yes, sir.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ed Samad. My first question, before I go on with my statement, is in regards to what Professor Rohazawati said earlier. There is no, I couldn't get to Google the word because the internet is very poor. You said there is no perpetuity. I know the word perpetual, but not perpetuity. In regards to the Copyright Act. Okay, the question is this. First, I have to build a little narrative. There are many, many of our songwriters in Malaysia, even from the days of P. Ramlee, to our songwriters in the 80s and the 90s, still benefiting from the royalty, signed perpetual contract with their publisher or publishers. They signed perpetual contract. My question is this. How do we get this contract to be amended or ended or terminated?
Nullified.
Or was judicial review by the court? Or as like the Indonesian government did in 2014, where in their Copyright Act 2014 include the reversal right. So my question is on reversal right. Probably the amendment of the Copyright Act, the next amendment done or held in 2024, because the last one was in 2012.
2022.
2022. So I hope that reversal rights will be something that we can really look on. First, also in regards to this, our government through MIPO recently give out a new guideline in regards to the CMOs. That is a very good thing, a very, very good thing. Once we achieve that guideline, our next objective will be to visit this reversal right. In regards to know your rights, I think for musicians and composers alike, the problem with copyright is it's difficult. It's very hard to understand. Number one, and in regards to the publishers, to the labels, and to those in power at the CMOs, there is a saying: it's impossible for you to understand something which your livelihood depends on you not understanding it.
Okay. Just now you were asking about perpetual right, okay, right in perpetuity. Well, under the copyright law, there is no such word used with regard to right in perpetuity. The only thing is that it's introduced into contract law, whereby the person is saying that whatever right you have got until you die, and 50 years after you die, we own it. All right? So that's what it's saying. The only thing is, if you have such a contract and you feel that there is unreasonable bargaining power, okay, there are cases where, for example, action has been taken in court to nullify such a contract on the basis of unequal bargaining power. This usually happens, for example, when you have composer, okay, or author or artist who has no legal assistant. So they just, for example, enter into a contract and sign everything away to the other party. And we have seen it overseas, for example. For example, Elton John get back his contract, for example, okay, with regard to his old song, on the basis that it's an unreasonable contract that was signed because he, being a young artist at that time, doesn't understand his right. So the other party just take advantage of it and then took over the whole of his copyright as long as he lived. That's what right in perpetuity means, for example. So if there are, for example, artists who feel that, you know, you are put in that situation, you can always, for example, go to court and ask for such contract to be nullified. I agree, there have been cases where, for example, we have seen composers who bring such cases in court and they fail. But they fail because why? Because it was shown into court that at the time they signed the contract, they had a lawyer present. So they cannot argue that we don't understand, okay, what is happening because they had legal representation. In situation where, for example, the legal representation is only one party, that is for the respondent alone, for the other party alone, then we can say that on your side, you don't have legal representation. So you can argue that these are unequal contract, unreasonable contract, because the law, there's a lot of cases, just overseas and also, for example, where action has been taken to court in this situation. And I don't like the word in perpetuity, actually, for example, okay? Because I think when you use such a word, you are telling the other party, whatever you own, your heart, work, your soul, now it belongs to me. Okay? More like a devil taking advantage of the other party, I think. And then the other question is with regard when you say that copyright law is hard to understand. There are three things that you need to know to understand copyright law. Maybe I'm biased because I've been teaching it for 38 years, for example. Number one, know what are the rights that is covered under the Copyright Act, for example. Number two, understand what are your exclusive rights. And number three, how long does your right last? And number four, who can give me assistance if I want to sue for copyright infringement? You know these four things, for example, you'll be home free. Okay? So that's why I always come in to assist my poor, for example, if they need, for example, speaker, I always come on board, you see. I do it for free. They don't have to pay me, for example, if you have association and you want, for example, me to come and tell you the very basic of copyright law, I'm always willing, as an educator to me, to have a generation that understand their law, get better protection, get better income for themselves. That's good enough. You see, that is reward enough for me. All right?
All right.
So anytime the artist society, for example.
I just want to add on a little bit. It came off a very casual conversation I had with Prof. Wati, right? So she says that, I run the tribunal, but nobody ever comes. So there's a problem in Malaysia. You got problem with copyright, you talk about it, you complain about it, but nobody ever goes to see her. So yes, please, go see her, yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Professor Wati and Prashant. We might have time for one very quick last question. And please remember, we also have David joining us here as well. Yes, sir.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shahab Ali, an Egyptian artist who is a resident of Malaysia and a member of a few CMOs in Malaysia. I want to ask a question regarding the relationship between the members of the CMO and the board of directors of CMOs. I believe this point is very important point to show where are or to show why the collection of royalties in Malaysia is quite high, but the education of the persons who are involved in the industry is quite low. So I believe that we experience lately some kind of unequal power also in terms of managing the royalty in the CMOs. Especially when we see the power of voting or the voting system that relies 100% on power voting or voting value that change according to the individual members. We experienced that personally with our group of author here, with one of the CMOs that supposed to be taking care of our rights as authors and writers, that during the last 5 or 6 years, we haven't got a chance to even ask a question regarding the decisions or the performance of the management of this particular CMO. So we have been trying very hard, helplessly, until the time come for my IPO to come out with the mentioned guideline that our fellow friends at Sama just mentioned. This guideline have got us as members to the playground back and have given us a chance to close the gap in the voting system. Regarding the point that I want to refer to is actually the fact that we usually go to the AGM of this CMO, and we try to get involved in the voting event, and the result usually it comes like 3% to our side and 97% to the other side, which is like almost like bulldozing us as a powerless majority, 5,000 plus member. So what I refer to regarding the guidelines of MIPO is actually changing the power vote that give you a chance to get an additional vote from 1,000 ringgit income of the previous year to 25,000 ringgit, which we believe it will close the gap and bring us close to have some say in the process of making the decision in the CMO. My question is regards some reaction of the CMOs towards that mentioned guideline. What is the limits for a government body to interfere the process of managing collective management organization and to try to fix the relationship between the management and the members of the CMOs? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question. And before we answer it, just because this is a MIPO and a WIPO event, we need to be careful about not, making sure we're taking sides. Maybe we can broaden the question about, how do we effectively negotiate with CMOs and the board of directors and so on. So does anyone want to answer the question here?
I think I will take on just a small part of this question.
Sure.
But he's right. You're right. It's an ongoing battle. I go through this battle myself, right? But I think the panelists here to be honest, we're not qualified to answer on behalf of MIPO, right? This is a MIPO question. Hopefully MIPO would have a proper answer to that for you, because I'm also in CMOs and I've been going through this process of saying that, hey, look, I want to vote. I want to vote. Now, after I've been in this industry for 10 years as a record label now, and only after 7 years I decided, hey, I want to vote. The first 7 years I was like busy making music, right? So the first thing I did was to understand the first one AGM that I went to, and I'm not eligible to vote because I'm under a category that is not even eligible to vote. So what did I do? I wrote to the CMO and says, look, I've made this much income, I want to upgrade my category. That's the first step initiative. This is a personal initiative for me to make sure that I put myself in a position where I am eligible to vote. Now, the fight that you guys are doing, it takes another 500 or 1,000 people to do the same thing of what I did. It's a long fight, but this is from a personal level. I believe that I too believe that change needs to be done, but proper channels. I think we got to work with the right people, work with the CMOs, figure a way to do it. But to answer your question, I think you will need for MIPO to come back for that.
I think David wanted to chime in here. David, what's your advice for effectively negotiating with CMOs?
Well, basically, it's essential, in my view, that CMOs have democratic governance. If it's an author's CMO, administrating on behalf of publishers and authors, the board should be 50% publishers and 50% authors. If it's a neighbouring rights CMO dealing with record companies and performers, it should be 50% performers and 50% record companies. Good examples of this are Sound Exchange in the USA, which is totally democratic, 50% performers and 50% record companies. If you have the authors CMO in Britain, PRS, they are 50% publishers and 50% authors. It's really, really essential that democratic governance is there. And whoever's regulating the CMOs needs to insist on that, in my view.
All right. Well, thank you so much, David. I think we're going to have to wrap it up here. Before we end, I think everybody who attended here got a questionnaire for this event. If you could please take a quick moment and fill that out, that would be very, very helpful. Thank you so much for your attention, and thank you to everyone who joined online. And we will see everyone here in the Maldives next month. So thank you so much.